Okay, hi guys, this is Mr. Dubin. Today we're starting a pretty big project. This is your cat island that you're going to design. There are 5 templates that you can choose from to start drawing your cat town and all your geographical features like trees and rocks and clouds and whatever else you put on your island. So you're going to want to have fun with your island. You're going to need 20 to 25 structures, that means buildings, and 20 to 25 other items, that means like trees and rocks and park benches and stop signs and street lights and any other geographical feature or item you want on your map, including like how I have on my map little mermaids and the little mermaid and a whale off the coast or anything else that you're going to want on your island would count under that. Copies do not count. So you may, like, let's say for instance, do a tree and then copy the tree to spread it out to make a jungle, but only one of the trees will count. So you have to have 20 to 25 items and 20 to 25 structures or buildings. Okay, and we're going to start that now. So there are 5 templates to choose from. I've gone to the stream here, and this is what it looks like on my iPad, and there's Cat Island down there. And when I click on it, it's going to ask me if I want to open it up in the browser. I would choose Chrome because you're on a Chromebook. I'm on an iPad, but there's my Cat Island. Okay, and where we're going to find the island templates would be on the lighthouse here on the map. There's a golden arrow on that little mini island off the coast there. So if you click on that, that should take you over to the student lessons folder where you found your character practice, your mandala template. Well, there's the Cat Island template. So what you're going to do is go in there and take a look at those and then choose one of those island templates to be the one that you want to design on. So I'm just going to take that one, open it up, and what I would do is save that to my camera roll. Okay, and then going back to Sketchbook, going to up here at the top, the little mountain, and going to my photos folder, and there it is. And there at the bottom. Okay, and now I have brought it into Sketchbook. Now, before we do anything with it, it says tap at the bottom with one finger to move pivot with 2 fingers. So we can tap and then drag it around on the page. We can expand it to fit the page better. So if you want to blow it up a little bit, you can just click and hold down with 2 fingers and kind of expand with those 2 fingers. Okay, if you look up there at the very top toolbar, up here at the very top of the screen in the black where it says done, there are various icons up there that allow you to manipulate this image, which we're going to cover in this lesson when we start drawing stuff. For those are your transform tools. So I'm going to just hit done and it comes in. Remember to zoom in, you expand. So that's how I zoomed in when I was using those tools at the top. That's how I got it to be as big as my page. It's a different format. It's a perfect square. All right. So from this point on, we're going to start drawing on the island. Where you see a grid on the grass there, that is permanent. It is there to help you kind of like learn how to do perspective, because in this lesson, when you draw your little buildings, you're going to have to do perspective. Okay, so the next part of this lesson, we will continue by starting to draw structures. I'm going to teach you how to draw little basic structures on this. And then the second half of my lesson, I'm going to eventually teach you how to do trees, like a palm tree and a regular tree, and a rock. And Mr. Rodriguez will show you how to do other items as well. And you will use that to create your cat island. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you here is a new tool up in the toolbar, which is for transforming stuff, and it's in your top toolbar. I'm going to make it turn a certain color here. So you see like that little plus sign up there at the top. If you look, it turns purple right there. It's right next to the paint bucket. Up there in the toolbar, it looks like 4 little arrows up there coming together. If you go back, remember there was the little mountain with the plus sign. That's how we imported in the image to begin with from our roll. So if I wanted to start a new sketch here, I'm going to go to new sketch. Okay, and just discard those changes. So like a blank slate here. Remember, we go up here to the top and we click on that little mountain up there at the top, and it turns purple. Little mountains with a plus sign, that little icon. Okay, and then that allows you to go to your photos folder and bring in your image. Okay, now I'm just going to hit done here. Those are your transform tools that you see up there at the top. They allow you to scale and distort and flip-flop and all kinds of stuff, but you can get back to those and do those kind of things later on. For instance, like if I wanted to rotate this around, I can click on the little square arrow there, and that rotates it around in a circle. I can flip it left and right. The little circle with the arrows allows me to scale it. Okay, so you can see which one is colored up there. If you click and hold down with your 2 fingers and then expand them, you can scale the image, and you can also just move it around with that little wheel as well. The one next to that lets you actually distort the image. So we have some functions that we can do to it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit done. Now let's say you did that and by accident and you released it and you're like, shoot, I wish it was bigger on my page or smaller on my page here, or like less distorted like there was on my page. Okay, you could always get back to that tool up here at the top toolbar. If you go to far, if you can scroll around, you can see that you can go all the way to the side there, and then there's that tool. You can see I'm going to click on it and then hit done. So that one and that little, it looks like 4 arrows come together. That gets you to the same section. So if I go click on the wheel there, you can see it's up there at the top. I'm making it blink on and off. That gives you this wheel. This can let you move it around on your page, but you could also click and scale it. So if you hold down with 2 fingers, like your thumb and like your middle finger or forefinger, and then expand, that lets you scale it up. Or you can scale it down and move it around on your page. I could even get back to that distortion thing, because you can see this one I kind of distorted a little bit, and then I can kind of get it back to normal. Okay, so that's how I did that, and you can go back to that at any time to scale your image that you import in. So if it's not big enough, you can pretty much fix that and make it how you see fit. Before you get started, it's important to know that. And then I hit done. Okay, now remember, everything is going to be a new layer. So over here in your layers, if you hold down, click and hold down on a layer, you can drag it around. So I would start drawing on top of the island. I would not draw on my island directly. You want to leave your island alone. So you want to make a new layer, and that's where you're going to want to draw your building. So what I'm going to do next is pick out a spot for my cat town and start drawing some buildings, and I'm going to kind of try to use the grid there to do perspective. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is kind of plan out. You might want to sketch on a little piece of paper before you start sketching on Sketchbook, so that you kind of plan out what you want to do. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is kind of like draw my street. One thing that we really haven't covered yet before I start actually drawing my streets is the library of the tools. Now, in the library, you can access a lot of other tools that you normally don't have in your toolbar if you haven't played with that yet. So I can go to a dry marker here, which is under Texture Essentials, or a watercolor even. to play with. And then I have even other pens down there in the Copic section there. So you click on library, click on the tool again to get rid of it. You can drag that tool into your library if you want, or your own particular tool set. If you want to have a tool, you can click and hold down on it and then drag and drop it into your toolbar, and now it's in my toolbar, and then just click on the tool again to get rid of it. And like that's a really, nice drawing tool. So decide how you want to do your streets first. So maybe I go get a lighter shade of color here. And remember, there's several places you can change your brush size. I think the easiest is just the slider over here on the side of the toolbar right there. It gives you instant kind of gratification. And then I would plan out my streets. Okay. By planning out your streets, you're going to know which direction to put your buildings. Okay, and then you're gonna, like I'm gonna have sort of a dirt road. I'm not gonna use paved roads on my island. And you can touch up your streets. You can kind of, get them to fade away. Remember, you're painting on a new layer over here. So, for whatever reason, you want to go in there later and go to the amount of erasing and the opacity, and you want to kind of like subtly clean up the ends here. You can do that. So I've drawn my streets is basically what I've done. And then next, I'll start planning out some buildings. Okay, so let's draw some basic houses. This is your little average, house that you'd see in a village somewhere. I kind of don't have any really, like any curbs there, like curbs of the sidewalk. And so like if I wanted to rectify that, fix that problem, I could go over to, before I draw my first house, the inking pen tool over here in the toolbar, and get a little itty bitty brush and go to my pot color and get a brighter shade, and then I could kind of like start drawing in my curbs or sidewalks, kind of like the cat island in the classroom stream has, which is what I did. Okay, and so I'm just kind of like cleaning up my road here. Now the grid helped me do the perspective. Okay, so now I've kind of added some curves there. Next, I'll start drawing with black, like we talked about. And I'm going to get an even smaller brush. And so, let's just say you want to do your average little stick house. It does take a little bit of time to even draw something like that, according to perspective. So you're going to match. So I'm going to draw like the front of that house. So this is going to be a house. And then as I draw my perspective, I kind of use the grid to kind of line it up to my street and to kind of like get the angles of my walls and stuff like that. And then I'm going to draw the side of the house over here. Okay. And then for the roof of my house, now my drawing is super sloppy. Plus my brush is a little too big, so I'm going to take it down a notch. Okay, so remember you can zoom in at any time. You do have a hard eraser, so I can kind of like clean up my edges here. I drew them too thick. So now I'm going to try to draw the color of my house. We have to determine when you do this, where is your light source? So remember when Mr. Rodriguez, and one thing that I'm doing bad right now, you guys, is if you notice, I'm drawing on my street layer. I don't want to do that. That's really bad. So I'm gonna like go undo, and I'm gonna redraw this little house properly on its own layer. So I made a blank fresh layer. Then that is where you want to draw your house. So you see how I use the grid and little diamond shapes, kind of like line it up, and you know you can be rough. Even a little stick drawing like this is gonna need some cleanup. If you'd like, you can always, import in another picture and bring those in. Remember, I went to my eraser tool and I cleaned up the edges. Okay. Now, like, you can go with that because we're going to refine it, refine it, and refine it. Okay. Now, next, you want to pick a tool to draw with. And, we experiment. I go back to that other original ink marker that I used. It was pretty cool. Get a color. When you're coloring it in, this will do. When you're coloring it in, you have to determine a light source. So remember when Mr. Rodriguez determined his light source, let's say that, where is the light here? So if I'm gonna draw in a little sun on a new layer here. Okay, so let's say up here at the top, is a sun. Alright, so that's our light source. So that is beaming down the direction of the light. So the front of the house and that front of the roof will be the hottest or warmest or lightest area, and then the side of the building will be shadowed. Let's go get a blue. Now, how do I get that blue back? Oh, I can go click on the puck and get that eyedropper. Another way to get to the eyedropper is down here at the little bottom. There is this little dot. It turned into an X there. Now, if you click on that little dot at the bottom, I could go to the eyedropper here, and I can eyedrop and snipe that color, and then go back to my whatever painting tool I want to paint with, and start painting with that color again. Okay, now this particular tool that I'm using does not like to draw on top of other colors. So if I was trying to preserve my lines and not wreck them, I don't have the pixels locked. I was trying to preserve my color, so some of these tools do certain things. This one protects the other color. It's kind of like transparent, but I could go to this tool here and it totally covers up the lines that I did. What should I do? Should I put the lines on a separate layer than the color? You can. At this point, you're kind of self-directed, whatever floats your boat. I would suggest that you put everything on a different layer, lines included. But in this case, if I was trying to clean this up again, if I wanted to go in there, I could always, kind of go back in there, clean up the lines a little bit, and then keep drawing on the same one. You kind of end up doubling your work up then, doing like some cleaner lines. Okay, so at this point, work how you see fit to work. Whatever method you have kind of been developing to help yourself, it's all fine. There isn't any particular way that works better than another, but I can tell you this, making sure you separate onto different layers is usually a really good idea. Now, I'm going to do all these buildings kind of slightly different so you can kind of get an idea of different workflows. So this one I'm going to put the next building on a separate layer. This building, you can see I'm kind of going and refining my rough lines. You can use Mr. Rodriguez's technique. You can kind of just wing it like I like to do. Make sure that I'm drawing on the right layer that I want to work on. You have a considerable amount of time that we're going to give you on this project, 3 weeks, because we know it's going to take you a while to refine these buildings. Okay, now a way of doing windows on your building is to just draw them in as a big long square. Okay, and then when you want to, so that could be my upper story windows, so that you kind of get them square on the edges. And remember, when you blow it up like this, you're going to see a lot of details that you're not going to see when you zoom out again. So keep that in mind. I want to match the same angle as my lines. You're not doing an architectural sketch, so we're just having fun with our island. So I can kind of do it this way. Now to clean it up, of course, I'm drawing everything on one layer. Now the next house I do, I will separate the lines and the color, but this one I'm kind of doing on one layer just to show you you can do that. It's okay. Okay, and then I could also kind of cut into the lines if they're too heavy, because I made mine a little bit heavy. All right, now I made that big turdy window, and I was going to get back to that. So how do we divide this into windows? Well, now you can just kind of like go down and cut through it. And then you can go on the bottom, and you can kind of like get all the windows. Okay. Okay, now I wouldn't use the same color on the side like that. That's going to be shadowed. So I would click on your puck, and here in the middle here, right there, that's where we have the different tones. So you could take it down a notch, and so that would be the same color on the wheel over here, but a different tone. So it's the same hue. The hue is color, and tone just means lightness and darkness. So now I could go over here and kind of draw in with my shadow color, because that side of the building would be colored because of the shadow of the light source. You always have to keep that in mind if you want your little buildings to look good. You can do any method you want to do. So here's my little building here. I'm going to do a more complex building next, but I need to draw in the roof color, so we have to decide, okay, what color should my roof be? Make it yellow or golden or something. I'm going to bring up my brush size so I can kind of cover a bigger area at once. I'm cutting into my lines up there at the top, so that's also a way of cleaning it up a little bit. I kind of like to do the perimeter or the outside first. That way I can, go backwards and kind of quickly just get all this middle section without having to be so nervous about screwing up the edges. And, some people get very nervous when they draw, like, oh no, I don't want to screw it up. Don't worry about it. If you mess it up, you mess it up. Sometimes, then you could go back like I did there and clean it up. And the more you do that kind of thing, the better you'll get at it. All right, so again, down here at the bottom, I can go snipe that color, and then go to my puck and click on the color dot, and then I could take it down a notch and tone. Why would I do that? So I keep the same hue. The outer wheel is hue, that's your color, and then the inner one is your tone, lightness and darkness. It's your saturation as well. Saturation means lightness, the brightness of the color, or how if it's low saturation, it's washed out. So like a pastel would be low saturation, and like a neon color would be very saturated. So this middle diamond shape does hue, it does tone, which is lightness and darkness, and it does saturation, which is brightness. The outer wheel does your hue or your color. Terminology like that you kind of need to know when you get into other softwares like Photoshop and Illustrator and stuff that will teach you later in CATs. I mean, remember, right now we're in a pandemic, so we're just teaching you this, but we have so many high-end softwares in the lab. We have a sculpting software, which is where they do all the critters and creatures like you see in Godzilla and Avengers, and it's called ZBrush. It's a 3D sculpting. It's an industry standard. You can get a job alone in the gaming industry if you know that really well. I teach that in my lab. Mr. Rodriguez teaches a really cool 2D animation software and a storyboarding software called Toon Boom. I teach another 3D modeling one called Cinema 4D. We have a lot of software that we teach in the labs that you're going to get access to when we come back. Right now we're just using this because we have no choice, because we're all stuck at home because we can't come to school and give each other COVID-19. All right, hopefully you guys are wearing your masks. All right, so there is my shadow on my house. Now, lastly on my house, I mean, there's other details I could put on this, of course, but lastly on my little structure, I want to put highlights in my windows to make my house look 3D-ish, because it's already kind of looking that way from the shadows. But what you do is go to a tool where you can have like a nice sharp little tool, and you're going to go get a color. I'll just get like a bright sort of bluish tone there. All right, and I'm going to go to each little window area and decide where I'm going to put my highlight. Now, where was my light source? Way, and you can see how a lot of details disappear when I shrink down, but my light source was way over there. So would the highlight, if my light source was over there, would my highlight be right there on the side of the window? No. Technically, no. But we still can do it just to kind of pop it out. Okay, so sometimes you can go contrary to your light source if it's just part of your overall design, because I've highlighted my roof and the rest of the building. So this on the side here, that's going to be, I didn't mean to do that. That's going to be my highlight of my window, just to give it, like, my walls, the appearance of some thickness. Okay, and then you can even go and do it on the bottom here. And then I would go over here to the other side and pick. I could snipe it or just go grab one and do the same thing over here on this side. So I kind of put an L shape in my window there. You can see a lot of flaws and mistakes and sloppiness when I'm like this far away, but when we zoom out, you know, that's basically going to be the building. You know, you're not going to see much. So, you know, keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and maybe add in some different shading. I could go to my airbrush and go get a bright little highlight in there, like that on the roof. I could go to remember my pixels are still locked. If you want to use black and you want to take your opacity down, you can use black and kind of get in there and add like a semi-transparent shadow on that side of the building. So I kind of darken it up that way. So you see how darken the shadows on that side. Now, how do we move that house around? How do we scale it? Let's turn off my crappy sun. Because maybe it's too big, maybe it's too small. Remember, and I'm going to draw more buildings in a minute. And next week I'm going to do trees. I'm going to show you how to do a palm tree, regular tree, and some rocks and stuff. But how do I draw the rest of this building? Or what? I mean, how do I move it and scale it and stuff? Remember up there that plus sign? So I could take that if I'm on the right layer, and I could go to the appropriate tool, and I can scale up that house. So this is something that I really wanted to show you. Like, so I pinch my fingers and I can scale it. Let's say I was slightly off with the perspective, like I did that. I could rotate it by twisting my fingers and match my perspective. I could pinch together and match the position of it. I could go up to the top here and flip it. Oops. So that it goes the opposite direction. So maybe I want a building on the other flip side of the street. I'm a little bit off when I do that with my perspective. But remember, you have a distortion tool, so I could hypothetically try to clean up my perspective. Let's say I want to make it a wider house. At the end of the street, go to my wheel, scale it down. Okay, so I put my house is completely changed up now. Now it doesn't match my light source anymore. Keep that in mind. But these distortion tools are really great. So like you can, we'll flip it back. So I can flip it back. And you see now my perspective's off, so I can go up there to that little grid thing and try to get it back. I don't know if I can save my house. Okay, and then hit done. Of course, I could always go to my undo arrow and go undo, undo, undo 10 billion times. Okay, so if you're not perfect with your perspective, you're a little off, things too big, whatever, go to the little plus sign up there at the top, the 4 arrows, and you can scale it and flip it and try to play around with, like this could be your touch-up tool to clean up your perspective. Okay. Okay, guys, so I'm going to teach you how to do a different type of couple of buildings here. Pagoda and maybe sort of a round building with some other little features on it, or maybe an oval shaped building. So I'm going to zoom in on our streets over here. You don't have to do the buildings all in the same exactly where they're going to go. I mean, it kind of helps to draw them where you want them to go, but if you want to move it around later, you can do what I showed you. Okay, so I'm going to go to a new layer here to put my line art on. Okay, and I'm going to select black, and I'm going to show you how to do a oval shape kind of building. Okay, so let's get ready. Now I got to decide like where am I going to put that building. I guess I could put it in a similar spot, or maybe over here at the end, so I can kind of maybe cover up that section there. So what I would do is I would draw my line art. So this building, I want to go to, let's say, what do I want to draw with? Try a new tool today. We'll draw with, this is a regular pen tool. It's not the inking pen tool. Inking pen tool looks like old-timey inking pen tool, so I'm kind of getting a small brush. All right, so I would draw in using my grid. Now, when you do an oval shape, kind of the ends usually sort of take like a kind of like a parallelogram type of angle like that. But you can always refine later. And then the front, just kind of match the curvature. And let's say on my roof here, we're going to have a tower similar to the Capitol building that I did on the other map. And let's say we want to have a little decorative rim there. And let's say we want to section off the top. And a little decorative rim here. Maybe my building isn't tall enough, so we're going to add a little bit of a foundation on it. Okay. All right, so I got my lines. I want to clean that up now, so I'm going to go to my eraser tool, one of them anyways, and start erasing. Oops, erased too much. Start erasing areas of lines and cleaning up my line art. So you can see you can draw real rough and then go in there and clean it up. Depends on, you know, how crispy, how perfect, how do you want everything to look. I think actually I want to keep that. I'm going to draw it as a big black area and then use that to kind of turn it into the sort of a rim of the building. And a little section over there too added. So the top part here I can kind of divide that way. I can add lines to my tower here. I'm a little bit off here and there, and that's okay. I can draw my windows. Put some window somethings up there. I think I need a door. I'll draw that as our door. Okay, maybe there'll be some steps that lead into our building. All right, so now I'm on a separate color, so I'm going to go to a layer, put it above, put it below, however you see fit. I'm going to go to a white tone, and I'm going to start drawing in my color. Now this will cover up some of the black. Okay, so this is one way of doing it. If you do it on top, of course you may move the layer. Remember, hold down on the layer and move it. I can put it below, and that then the black line's covered up, so you know, whatever works for you. And then I'm going to get a gray tone. So we're going to get lightness and darkness. Remember, that's the grays over there. And we're going to kind of draw in the rim of our building here. And I'm going to go up there to the top of my tower. Okay, so here's a dilemma. You can kind of like creep the gray along so it kind of gets brighter as it goes. until you eventually get to white to create a sort of a gradation. Make sure I'm painting on the right layer, easy to screw up and paint on the wrong layer. So you can paint a subtle gradation little by little by little, like I did. Okay, so this might be faster, and then going to a white, and then going to your airbrush, and then on a low opacity, kind of like start. Remember, it builds up. Bigger tool, and kind of build up my gradation that way. Remember, I'm gonna move my line art later above that. Right now I'm kind of keeping it below as I paint, so I can kind of see what I'm doing a little bit better. So that's one way of building up like subtle shadows, especially on something curvy. Bring up the line art here, go back to my pen tool, get black, start, move the line art above. I need to go back to my color layer. So you want to keep track, always keep track of whatever layer you're on. I do it myself. I've done it in the lecture a couple times of mistakenly going to, the wrong layer. I don't know if I'll have time to completely do this building super duper detailed, because I don't want to have hours of video that you have to watch for the lesson, but you kind of get the idea. Now, this is pretend this is cleaned up, because it's definitely not, but it's looking pretty decent. And I didn't really draw in the color for the steps. I think in this case, I'm going to kind of go in there and paint it on them directly. Try to fix it up that way. Remember, also, the windows, you want to do that little L shape. Even doorways. And even if you're doing a quickie job, like I am, kind of spice up your window that way. All right, so this isn't the best drawing. It's a little sloppy. It would take me a while to clean this up, but I got a good one started. So what I would do here though is, let's say it is cleaned up. Let's say I've finished this. Let's say I've fine-tuned it. It needs probably another 30 minutes worth of work, which I'm not going to do, but you would do. How would I combine these two things? Would I keep them separate? That kind of thing. Remember, you can take and click on the layer and go merge, and it will merge downwards. Why would I do that? Well, let's say I'm finished with the building and I want to go up here to the top plus sign and then go to the scaling circle and scale my building down, or rotate it, or whatever I want to do to get it in position. Hit done. Oops, screw it up. And then zoom out, and now I have another building up there. Okay, let's do one more type of building here that's easy to do. This could be like basically the building I'm going to do here. It could be a gazebo in your park, or it could be a pagoda or anything like that. It's easy to do on perspective here. I'm going to go to my pen tool, get a black. I want to go to a new layer, and basically I'll just kind of draw it over here. Let's say it's going to be up here on the top. Oops, didn't mean to do this. That's what I'm talking about. Once in a while you'll drag your fingers in. Let's say I'm going to draw it up here. I don't have a grid up there, so hopefully by then you've kind of learned your lesson. But let's say I draw the front. Okay. And then we would draw the sides. And maybe there's a part like holds it up, and then we do the roof section. Maybe there's a little bit of a steeple there. Okay, and then maybe the roof has some lines on it that you can kind of solidify the perspective a little bit. Maybe there's a bigger foundation. Okay, and I don't even have to do the other side, but I could draw like the floor because you can see through the arch there. And then, you go to a new layer and you start painting with color. So you pick a color. Let's say that's going to be my brightest side. And then I go and get a less saturated tone for my front. Or maybe the light is not directly on this. It's kind of directly on that other part there. And then the other part will be in the shadow. So I never really changed hue there. Let's say I want to do a white portion over here. So this would kind of be in tune with my light source. Go down a gray. Go down a darker gray. That's kind of how you pick your color. And then let's say for the inside of the gazebo, now I could easily do a whole like a Chinese pagoda this way, all kinds of different buildings. Let's get a brown color for the roof. Take it over a notch for the middle tone. Take it over another notch for shadow. Okay. Go back, refine, maybe put that, move that layer. Okay. And then, refine the shadows even more. How could I fix up the shadows on this even more? Well, I could go to the airbrush and get a black and then just play with a small brush with opacity and kind of just, get in there and sort of improve the shadows a little bit. You can even like get the inside a little bit better, that kind of thing. You can put a little shadow under, like, let's say the eaves, any sort of like overhanging part, that kind of stuff. Now I haven't added any shadows to the buildings, which I'll probably do when I show trees next week. But how would I merge those together? Remember, take the top one, go to merge. Now it's one single one. It's much too big. How do I scale it down? Go up to the top little plus sign, go to the wheel. Swoop. Okay. It's a little big for my town, but it will hit done. Zoom in. Okay. And now I just, I gotta get the perspective fixed a little bit on this blue house. It's kind of a little bit off on one part. I need to get the sizes. Remember, this is a map, so everything does not have to be to scale. If you look at the original map of Cat Island in the stream, you can see like the mermaids are bigger, like their house size. So things can be out of proportion. Proportion means size. So have fun with your Cat Island. Figure out what kind of buildings you want to do. Mr. Rodriguez will show you a few things. He'll show you some other smaller details. Do you want stop signs? Do you want street lights, mailboxes, um, anything? There's all kinds of stuff that you park benches, whatever you want to put in your cat town. Remember, you need 20 to 25 structures, all different. Um, I'll show you a little bit about combining buildings to make a unique structure next lesson, next week. But it's going to take you some time. So we're giving you 3 weeks to do this project. I would kind of take it in stages if I were you. I would, map out your street. I would map out, where your streets and roads and paths are going to go. Maybe you're going to have steps on your cliff over here. Then when I would add like another layer, and on the new layer, you're going to want to, go ahead and, design in your stairs that go up your cliff side there, that kind of thing. Um, and then start drawing your buildings, and take a week for that, and then the following week we're giving you 3 weeks. You do the trees and the plants and the little details like rocks and street lights and stop signs and all the mailboxes, small details. And then the final week, just go in and do your shading of the buildings, like where the building's casting a shadow, where the tree might be casting a shadow, and all the small, like the waterfall, because I haven't shown you how to do the waterfall yet. You can see mine just look like straight, so I have to do the waterfall, and maybe add some lines and stuff like that. So the final week will be the final touches. Okay, so have fun with it. Take your time. If you want to remember import in another picture, you can always import in a little picture of a house and trace it, and then just dump that layer um, if you want, or you can freehand it, or you could have side by side. You're going to need reference. Not everybody knows how to look at and draw a house or what it should look like. So we're not asking you to do anything that you don't feel comfortable with. So if you need to look at references, like have a window side by side of maybe something you Google image search, then do that. Whatever works for you. Okay. Have fun with this.